Hello, everybody. This is episode 2 of Sarah and Lucie Playful Leadership, we're called, aren't we? Playful Leadership and Other Things with Lucie and Sarah. And we are really excited to have with us today our guest, Evie Rosset, who is the queen of all things other focused well-being. And the reason that we have invited her on today is to pick up on, for anybody who listened to our first episode, the point that we were talking about at the end about how playfulness in particular can help us turn our focus outwards in terms of building our well-being. So we're going to be diving into that and having a good old chat and seeing where that conversation takes us over the next kind of hour or so. But firstly, we wanted to talk about something that we have experienced, something we've witnessed, been part of, felt in the last month or so since we made our first episode. That was playful, and how that has helped us, why that marked us.
Yeah.
So Lucie, I'm going to hand over to you first.
I was like, send me last. This is my idea, and I had completely forgotten about this. But do you know what? I run an accountability club, which is a group of women, and we meet once a month, and we just cheerleaders. I teach leadership development, and we all bring specialities into it, but we're basically just a space to cry if necessary. And I did this with the group, and it was the best thing in the whole wide world, hearing what brought other people joy. So I'm really excited that we're doing this here. I think this week, I know it's like probably one that we wouldn't usually say, but because I've been locked in my house with bloody cyclones, I have got some really nice relief off some of the hilarious memes on Instagram. I really have. Like, I love watching the way people use humor in really dark times. So I have enjoyed looking at some of the creativity that has been on there. And I have also just begun reading what's his surname? Stephen Fry's book, Mythos. I don't know if any of you have ever read it. And reading for me is massively joyful. So learning all about the ancient Greeks, it's incredible. Evie, I'm going to pass over to you. And Evie, do me a favour as well, because you really are a queen in your field. So tell us what's made you happy, but also tell us a little bit more about your background as well, if you don't mind.
Okay. I'll start with my background. Okay, professionally, trained as a researcher, I guess, in cognitive science, and have been kind of working more closely in the field of positive psychology in the last 15, 20 years. I know both of you through teaching on the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program. And in parallel to that, I run a nonprofit. But basically, the idea behind the nonprofit and the idea behind my kind of teaching and research that fascinates me the most is this getting outside of ourselves, an other-oriented focus approach to well-being. So we'll touch on that, I'm sure, during our conversation today. And coming back to, so something playful or that has brought me joy. Oh, too many. I mean, joy is, yeah, it's spring here. So it's like lovely.
Nice.
But as playful, something playful. So a couple nights ago after dinner, my son was eating these mini chocolate almonds. He's 17. As we know, kids play much more freely than adults. So, of course, he thought that instead of just eating the chocolate almonds, it'd be better to bounce them off the wall and try and kick them with his foot to see whether it goes into his mouth. So he's like, this is what I'm going to do. How much are you going to pay me if I succeed? I'm not going to pay you anything, but I'll congratulate you. So that was fun. I was kind of having fun with that. And then one hit near me, so I threw it back at him. throwing food, the most kind of form of play, and yet completely lovely too. So
Yeah,
And I
it
love
sounds
that.
lovely. Thank you, Evie. That really does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, tell us.
Well, I'll tell you mine, but I was just wanting to reflect on Evie's. Like, I love that example being of something um, that, you know, as parents, you might otherwise be like, no, don't throw your food. You shouldn't play with food. Like, it's really tempting to kind of feel like sometimes you have to kind of lay down this like rule about not playing at food time, or, you know, not doing this, when actually, like, why? And if you can just let that play happen and enjoy it and embrace it, then it becomes this beautiful moment. And, you know, there's a lot of learning that's going on, right, with doing that, as well as just the fun part of it, like the physics of kind of how do you throw it so it bounces off the wall and get it into my mouth, and, you know, all of that, and the like competition with yourself to see if you can do it better, and so much goodness that comes from that we forget to look for when we're just thinking about, well, what are the kind of social norms here, you know. So I love that you brought that example. It's a really nice reminder to sit back sometimes and just think, well, what if I could just play in this moment? What if I allowed play to happen in this moment, and not just when we're parenting, but in other areas of life? I think can be a really freeing perspective, and bring a lot of good. So the example that I thought of was also one with my daughter yesterday. So I've been feeling like my nervous system is quite like stressed at the moment. I've been feeling like very tense for various reasons. So harder to access this playfulness. But yesterday morning, my daughter, she decided to wear her Wonder Woman cape and a mask to go to school in. Like, sure. So, and I normally like, I have to drive her because I have to take my other child to nursery, and so, but I try and park like a bit away from the school so we get a bit of a walk there. And so what she was doing on that walk was she was like running, and she was like, mummy, tell me if my cape is like waving in the wind. And so like she was running, and I was watching her, and she was like, is it doing it? I was like, yeah, it's doing it. Yeah, it looks really cool. And, you know, I was telling her about all it like flapping around and stuff. And then she stopped and she took it off, and I was like, oh, you know, okay, she's obviously had enough of that. And she's like, your turn, mummy. And she like gave me the cape. And by this time we were like really close to the school gate. So I was like, sure, I'm going to put this cape on and I'm going to run, and I'm going to look like a fool. And she's going to enjoy seeing, because she wanted to see the flap. And for that moment, for that like 5 seconds or whatever that I was doing that, like it just brought me like this amazing joy. And I was like, who cares? I'm going to look like an idiot, but actually, you know what, I'm going to look like a great mum too. So, and I'm going to just get this little boost of positive emotions that I really need right now. And it was lovely, and it was this wonderful like shared moment between us as well, you know. And she was like, oh cool, you know, I saw it happening, and then I gave it back to her, and then she had another turn and stuff. And again, like I could have easily been like, no, I'm not going to do that. Don't be ridiculous. Like put the cape back on, or, you know, wear it or don't wear it, but I'm not wearing it. But like, what is to be gained through that exchange? And there was so much ripple effect from it, for like my own personal well-being, like our connection, our bonding, like this shared thing that we had. That, yeah, it was a really nice moment. And an otherwise stressful drop off, because I've been stressful for other reasons. But
yeah, that sounds really lovely. Thank you, Sarah. I love hearing other people's good stories. Like, I definitely like feel that energy. And we're on about joy and kind of community. And I think for me, we have got ourselves into this. I think about this quite a lot. We have got ourselves into this really sorry situation where we think that as adults, play is for losers, or play has to be formal, or play is for people who just haven't managed to grow properly. Like, we've really demonized it. And that absolutely devastates me, because reality is what we perceive. It's what we construct, isn't it? And we can develop the most joyful, incredible connections and environments if we just choose to see the world through that lens. And I think that, I don't know if that's really messy what I'm trying to say. I suppose it's all there for the taking, but all of us have been conditioned to not to fear taking the step into connecting with other people, particularly if it is a non kind of uniform way of access.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing as well as we're sharing this is this kind of, it's not just in the moment itself, it's in the sharing of it between us afterwards that is kind of adding an extra layer to that. We're enjoying hearing each other's stories, we're reliving our own stories in the retelling. Like, it's all of it is giving it more what's the word, like more importance, and like creating more synapses in our brains that are then
consolidating it.
Consolidating it as a positive experience, a positive memory that then kind of goes into the bank that we then have at our disposal when we need to draw on those resources. So we're coming back again to this idea of like, it's not just, there's like play, which can be nice personally, but then if you're playing with people, it extends out. But then if you're talking about it and sharing that experience with other people, even if they weren't there, then there's also benefit to everybody in doing that.
I think too that it's significant that both Sarah and my experiences were prompted by children, and Lucie, as you say, children seem to be less inhibited than adults in being playful. And I think that one of the things we can do as adults to, if we want, as Lucie, you were saying, kind of normalize being more playful, is have a sort of rule of thumb in our mind that when we are invited, and invited in, invited with a little I, when we're invited to play or invited to engage in some kind of playful mindset, to lean into that as much as we can. So if your daughter to wear a cape walking to school, embrace that. Because even that, Sarah, is something that maybe some other people would say, no, you can't wear a cape to school. And then when she decides to run with the cape, okay, you encourage that. And then she offers you the cape. Each step of that is, as you embrace that, that is doing you a lot of good. It's doing her a lot of good. And actually, it's doing everyone else, the community, a lot of good too. And likewise, as we were talking with my son, often if you see someone throw almonds against the wall, you can say, hey, stop, but why stop? What harm is going to come? So it's kind of to have this, by default, I'm going to go with the play, and the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be a better place.
End.
It would.
We've said all that needs to be said.
It's so true, but we stop ourselves all the time. So I know at my old patch, military area, whatever people call it in Civvy Street, but you live in military communities, and it's lonely moving from area to area. And I put up a post like, I'm a really crappy skateboarder, but who wants to be my buddy, and come and join. And I think in the end there was about 6 of us, and we would put the kids to bed, and then we would just have the best time on our longboards, and we loved it. It was so much fun. And then people would come up and say, I'd love to do that, and I'd love to join, but I'm too old, or I'm going to get hurt. We're like, no, you're not. We've got spare boards. Like, join us. And then the chaps would come across and say, oh, it always looks like so much fun. But there was that internal mental barrier that like, this isn't even for me. Like, there's not even a question that I can participate in this, because it's absolutely just something that my will can't commit to. But that play then led to, we used to just do stupid things, like, and just then we began to put our chairs on the front of our houses. and we'd sit and have drinks together, and then that turned into nights at different restaurants to try different types of like cuisine and stuff like that. So that initial concept of play turned into something much richer that actually incorporated everybody's version of play as well, instead of just mine, which was we're going to skateboard and you're going to follow me. Yeah, and I just think how can we encourage and invite people to access more? Because I was really happy. I was extremely stressed because we were moving countries, and I was extremely overwhelmed, but I was also exceptionally happy, and it was all from that. Yeah.
It's about like what you're talking about, that activity of skateboarding, and we kind of attach the play to that, and we're like, oh yeah, well that's my version of play because it's skateboarding. But I think it's what you're talking about more deeply is just giving stuff a go, right? You're just throwing off these constraints and going, I'm just gonna try this out. Like, and that to me, that's the essence of it. Like, that's the essence of this playfulness. So like, you might not be into skateboarding, you might not have ever tried it before, but it's about that mindset of kind of like, well, you know what, I'm just going to give this a go. I'm just going to put this out there and see what happens. And that's what play is, right? It's experimenting. It's going, I'm just going to do this and see what happens. And we can be so held back by the fear of all the things that might not go the way that we would like it to go, or how we might look, or what if nobody replies to that? What if I'm still skateboarding on my own? I'm going to look like an idiot, like whatever. That we overlook the kind of benefit of just throwing stuff to the wind and seeing how it goes.
I think too that what's key there, that in Lucie's example of skateboarding, which is typical of play more broadly, is there's really, it's a fine line between, as you say, Sarah, experimenting and playfulness. And so there's a certain level of uncertainty that is inherent in the play, and that can be scary. So you need to feel comfortable as well. So getting back to Lucie's question about how can we encourage play if we're less used to it, and it's all about finding that that small zone in a way where you feel comfortable enough to try, but it's still a little experimental to create that joy, right? Yeah. So for skateboarding, for me, I've only, experimented it when my son was skateboarding, and I would just be very intimidated. But if it were something like I saw someone else just I don't know what, tipping it up like
Some
that.
Some people would just go on their bums. They would sit on the board.
Yeah. So if I see someone doing that and saying, "Oh, I'm allowed to do that," and that's, I think, very important. And also in terms of how we encourage play, particularly in corporate environments where it can feel very contrived, this also is important to keep in mind, because you cannot force play, right? It loses the joy that comes from it if you are forcing it. Well, actually, I don't know. You can encourage it, so that, again, fine line between, but I can see many people in a corporate environment seeing the more playful folks, doing the ping pong or doing the improv or whatever, and being like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And so, play is not for me. So I would say that one way to open up more playful behavior across the board is by expanding what we mean by play, and thus having options for everyone. So it's just going more, it's not like kind of like, okay, play now. Like, oh, it's work and play. Okay, now I work at this great place, so I'm going to have some playtime. No, it's just more wherever you are on the playful spectrum. It's just like, okay, go 1 inch closer towards being more playful.
Okay, I've got a
Yeah.
question to this. Um, Thinking really useful what you've just said. Like we have to remember that plays not for everyone in certain forms. But taking it into an organization, and we can sell the benefits of play. We can say how we're going to have better kind of productivity, better engagement, increased well-being, all of that kind of stuff. But then how do you actually, do you just give a number of options? So do you think about the language that is used in an organization? Because personally, for me, language is everything. So do we use a more relaxed, playful language to signal safety and openness? Is it about the way we set up our offices as well? Is it about the different ways that we connect as a team? Like, we can't, well, we can. I'm that person who can have organized fun. But we can't, like you say, force it upon people. So do we have to have the touch points within an organization for them to access play if they want to? Like, is that how we would bed it in?
I think this is part of the challenge, isn't it, with play in organizations, is because people come at it from that like ping pong or improv. Let's do something that we associate with play. And my take on it is actually we need to take a step back from that and ask ourselves, like, what is play, and where does that come from? If it comes from what we have inside of us, is this playfulness, which is that mindset, which is that attitude. And you mentioned language, Lucy. I think language is a huge part of it, because we all interpret language in our own way and make our own of it. And when they've done research, the way that you give an instruction to do a task, whether you're using like more typical like work task based language versus more experimental, open, playful language, so carry out this task versus try out this experiment, for example, affects the quality of the task, of the activity that is then done. So it's like a subtler clue to just get people in that headspace where they're thinking about experimental playfulness rather than task-based work with set rules and expectations around it. But then there are some people who are going to access that more easily than other people.
Yeah, framing, I think, is super important. How whatever you're trying to promote is framed. And I think if you're in an organization where people will push back against the notion of play, if we call it play, well, then call it something else. Because, and I imagine that you guys have talked about kind of what are the elements involved in play, but in and of themselves, the things that come to mind, for instance, none of them have anything that anyone in an organization would push back from. It's a mindset where you lose your sense of self. The behavior is intrinsically rewarding. All of that. Well, that's good. And as we know, there's huge overlap between the term flow, which organizations, of course, love, and play. And so I sometimes just recommend that people call it flow and say, okay, work for flow. And so I think that the framing is important. And if you want to encourage play because as a coach or as a consultant the benefits of play, or as a leader the benefits of play, and you think it will work better without calling it play, go for it.
Would we even call it anything?
No, exactly. Yeah.
Is it not just baked in? And I'm thinking, as you were saying that for play, I was like, oh, flow. But for me, whilst I do like to be, and me and Sarah were on about this before, I do like to do things. I'm definitely very curious. I love dance classes and I love like trying new things. But when I'm at my absolute happiest, and it feels playful, is when I'm learning and when I am actively engaged in like developing something. So for me at work, real play would be time, space, and resources to allow me to dedicate myself to flow within my work. That would be like ultimate. And then to be able to share it with a nerd oh my God, that would be like the dream. So again, thinking of that, there's going to be those people who are like, need to just be going, want to actually see play as like participation in something else. And then there are the others who are just going to want to sit and just like geek out on whatever, because that's what people are in the workplace. Well, not everyone, but many are there because they, they're coders or whatever else, like for a mission. Yeah.
And I guess the pushback comes from the organizations where actually they're asking people to do work that isn't
Fun,
like
enjoyable.
Intrinsically enjoyable,
Exactly.
right? So how do you hold both of those two things? Like, this is the work that needs to get done, and it doesn't bring with it
Right.
much opportunity for intrinsic motivation and flow and meaning and all of those things that we know are really good for us. And I think there are exceptional people who can find things in that. Like, I know I used to work on the railways, but I worked with rail staff, and driving a train, for example, is very monotonous, very lonely, and for some people that works well. But I remember one particular guy that I spoke to was like, the only way I can the way that I find meaning and purpose in it is to know that, like, I am getting people home safely. That is my responsibility, and that is my meaning, and I'm finding that in this job, and that's what brings it something for me, that other than just the fact that I'm sitting there having to, it's stressful, right? Because it's very boring and monotonous, but yet you have to be on high alert the whole time for safety reasons and stuff. So that's how he overcame it. And you hear stories as well of I think it's at NASA, is it the cleaners allegedly are kind of trained to be they're part of the mission as much as any of the astronauts or the astroscientists or whoever, because their job is important in all of that as well. So they're kind of brought into that bigger organizational vision and culture. And I think the reality is that is unobtainable, or feels unobtainable for a lot of people. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I have something to reply, but Lucie, did you want to?
No, mine is kind of same but different. So Abby, you go, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay. Well, I think there's an important point that, Sarah, you've raised, which is that when we're talking about work and play at work, what people do for work is vastly different. And so if you're a coder and love that, that could be playful for you, but that there are jobs and there are people who find where it's easier or harder to find playful aspects to their work. The examples you raised about finding meaning and purpose in work that could feel monotonous is important. I think, however, and I agree that it is harder to integrate play into certain types of tasks. However, again, I think that if we look at it as, is there a way for me to make this experience an ounce more enjoyable? We don't even have to say an ounce more playful, because it probably will be more playful, but not, is there a way for this to be fun? No. Is there a way for this to be an ounce more enjoyable? Probably, right? And I remember hearing one of these examples that maybe you guys have heard as well, but is someone who was quality control for a potato chip crisp factory. Okay. And so so monotonous, and you have to be alert. And this person would try and find characters in the crisps, right? And so it would take one off the line, like, oh, Jesus, okay, taking them off. Marilyn Monroe here. And so they had a collection of crisps that had profiles in them.
Jesus.
That's a wonderful
Yeah,
way to make it playful. It makes it more interesting, and the person is just as alert, doing their job just as well, if not better. And so it does take a bit of creativity to find those things. But again, the driving a train, I think that your example, Sarah, of finding meaning and purpose in thinking about the people who I am getting safely home is an excellent example. That could be reinforced by, for instance, having photographs of people, or having at least one, or interacting with one customer, one passenger a day, making that much more salient. So that's more on the meaning and purpose angle. In terms of being more playful, you could say, okay, last time I drove by 10 goats, and today I'm going to bet, you set up a bet with your child, like, saw 10 goats yesterday. What do you think I'm going to do today? Oh, I think it's going to be 12. Oh, really? I think it's going to be 14. Okay, whatever. Or red houses, or annoying people, or whatever you can do. But there are ways to make it, again, an ounce more playful. It doesn't mean you're going to be having a ball driving the train for the 8 hours of your shift.
Right.
But
yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
It's like micro, like incremental shifts.
Exactly.
And what came to my mind, I'm really sorry, Lucy, I know you have something just to
Go for it.
to build on this, was, I have a similar thing, like driving my kids home from school. There's this garage, I think it's a car garage or a car wash or something, that has one of those, like it's like a tube of fabric that's like a man, and it blows air up it, and it's kind of like all waving around like this. And sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not there. And so just before, like, we come up the corner around where we're going to see it, and we take bets on, like, is it going to be there? Is the orange man going to be there? Is he not going to be there today? And then what came to my mind when you were talking about that in the train driver example was, maybe a useful question for people to think about is, well, what would I, like, if I had a child with me, what would they look for, or like, what could they do, or how would I make this engaging for a child? Because we all have that child still somewhere inside us, and if we can somehow access that, then that can open up the possibility for those little increments of playfulness.
I love that.
Lucy,
that's a really nice way to look at it. I'm probably going to derail everything now with my thought, because it's not well put together yet. I'm going to go for it. So, thinking about really crappy jobs, I've had many that have been painful, and the job has been crap, and the environment has been crap, and the culture has been crap, and the leadership has been crap. It's just been deeply unpleasant. And that is going to happen for many, many people. They're living that reality. And as I'm sat here, I'm reading a book at the minute called Scarcity Brain. And yeah, have you read it?
No, I was
You
thinking of
nodded.
scarcity, just
Okay.
scarcity, but not scarcity brain.
Itself. And I didn't know what this book was, but actually it's this chap, and he is looking at modern day addiction. And he is looking at how we have like this scarcity loop. Like, we know that there are certain way that we can kind of prime the brain, and we can kind of use our wiring against us to keep us actively engaged in a task. And that this is used everywhere. So initially it was in Vegas, how to get, it was some guy, he went from on the nudges, instead of like the pull slot, he realized that if reward was given in a kind of like more of a chaotic way, then people were more likely to kind of participate in and engage. And then this is now everywhere. This is our smartwatches. This is our social media. This is the way supermarkets sell to us. This is literally Parliament. Not even Parliament, sorry, not Parliament, but politics. So they said they realized that after Donald Trump came into power in 2016, he began to kind of gamify politics as well. So he used Twitter and platforms like that to put out the most kind of radicalized tweets. because they got the engagement. It leapt into it and used this kind of scarcity loop in the brain. And the more engagement, the more that he could control markets, the more he could get done, this kind of stuff. And now it's actually standard practice for politicians to use more kind of explosive ideas and things like that to get that engagement. But to my points, it's everywhere and we don't realize it. And they have these exceptional versions of it. So Duolingo, they have done an excellent job at keeping us hooked. Is that because I'm morally and I'm sat there, I'm like, this feels like people should be tried for this. This feels like awful. My attention is being sold to the highest bidder. That's going to impact my longevity, my cognition, all of this kind of stuff. Yet in really horrendous organizations, if they can gamify tasks, is that using that kind of scarcity loop for good potentially? Is it going to improve well-being of the employees because they feel as though they're getting a reward, and therefore improve productivity? I don't know. Just popped into my head.
I can give that a shot, Sarah.
Oh,
There's a lot there.
Yeah, sorry. You're welcome.
Okay, so gamifying life in a way. Pros and cons. Is that what your question kind of is? I mean,
I suppose.
No, but basically, you're bringing up these fundamentals of how the mind works. And we have evolved, our brains evolved in a time where it was a matter of survival to obtain resources. And so that scarcity mindset definitely pervades everything that we do. When you're talking about the slot machines, that's this thing called variable reinforcement, where you get a reward and then you don't, but then you get another one and then you don't, but there's no pattern, so you can't predict it, so you're going to keep coming back, and it is super effective. And of course, the social media platforms are aware of this and use it to keep us engaged, for better or for worse. Now, without talking about politics, in terms of a corporate environment, creating a more gamified environment to accomplish their tasks or to have their employees more effectively accomplish their tasks, I would say if the employees have to accomplish their tasks anyway, might as well make it enjoyable and make it so that the employees have an easier time to do it effectively. And we do know many of the elements that are relevant to do so, thanks in part to all the research that has led to social media, which we all agree has massive negative society. Well, I don't know if we all agree. I think it's pretty much a given that we know there's massive negative societal consequences to that. However, one of the benefits could be using those same techniques, as we see with Duolingo, which people say again and again, look, this is using these same techniques for good. We can use those for, I would say, for neutralness, just to make tasks more enjoyable, but we can also use them for good. And there are people who are looking at how we can use gamification and play more generally to help solve societal issues.
Climate play.
And if it's fun, great. I mean, some people have this attitude of, oh no, work should be hard. I've never really subscribed to that approach. I think that if you're having a good time and doing something more effectively, great, win-win.
Yeah.
And I think there's a nuance with the gamification of things where I think where it can be really effective is where you're turning problems into a game to be gamification when it comes to like problem solving. So I'm thinking of things like Lego Serious Play, which is really about bringing that, what if this problem was something that you could play with, and how would you represent it in through these Lego bricks? But you could do it with anything, with Play-Doh, with drawing, with all kinds of different things. And I know there are people who work on climate change developments, for example, through those kinds of methodologies, where we're not saying like, hey everyone, like the planet's a game, like the climate's a game, like who cares if we win or lose this, let's just have a play. It's about going, okay, well, this is a serious problem that needs to be solved. Like this is a real challenge to humanity. And the way that we can engage our best problem solving, our best creativity, is if we engage our playful brain with that. So let's look at some of these concepts in a playful way and see what comes out of that as a result. And I think that's a really effective way to be using it. I think there's a caveat that comes where you're just trying to impose game-like rules on tasks that appear to be kind of arbitrary. We're going back to that kind of mandated play, that forced play. And I know there's been some research that found that students taking part in a course at university where it was gamified did less well than those who were able to take part in it and study for it in the way that suited them best. So I think there needs to be a nuance to where it's not a kind of blanket, hey everyone, this is what the organization needs to do and we're going to make it into a game and these are the rules of the game and it's going to be fun for everyone. It's more kind of, okay, how do we approach this in a way that we can harness the creative problem solving that is needed within us all, and maybe we make an environment in which people are able to explore those things in their own way. So it's a kind of environmental container more than it is a task to be set out and carried out by everybody.
Or it's putting in place it's putting in place the conditions that each person who works in that organization can choose which ones they want to participate in, or the students also. I think that autonomy is so important in everything, but especially in something like play and especially in an organization. So if I say, oh, look, I'm going to make your job more fun, Sarah, you're going to do this, this, and this, and look, isn't it fun? You're going to feel like rejecting everything I say. Mm-hmm. If I say, look, Sarah, other people have said the job is monotonous or difficult. We've put in place some of these things that we hope might make it less so. This is what they are. You click on this box and you get some unicorn and confetti that comes up across the screen. If you want whatever, you choose, right? If I was working someplace and every time I clicked the box, the unicorn and confetti came up without my choosing it, I'd be like, come on, guys. And yet, if someone just said, here, Evie, there's this cheesy thing, but you tick off your task and you get a unicorn and confetti, do you want that? I'd be like, probably not. But then I'd see someone else and be like, oh, well, maybe. And then I'd try it out and I'd be like, oh, actually, this is super reinforcing in some really bizarre way. And I'm going to keep it in. So it's like these tiny tweaks make all the difference. And so autonomy is completely fundamental to any integration of play in any organization or in anyone's life. It really has to be the person's choice.
But it can't be play without it, right? Like autonomy is a key component to it. Like if a child, when you look at children playing, they have complete autonomy over what it is they're doing. Like that's what happens when they're immersed in it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lucie.
Yeah. No, I'm going to derail it. I'm sorry. As you're talking, I'm thinking, and I keep going back to this idea of gamified and of being like an insular thing and an inch of the task. And it kind of went to this something popped into my head about an individual who was trying to sell like a mental health app into an organization. And you have to complete tasks that are designed to improve psychological fitness. And I was like, oh, but so you're alone. You're still on your island alone from the things that actually make life good. But society has told us to be guarded and like told us to reject instead of connect. And so I sat there and I was thinking, well, what actually helps you connect in a healthy way? And this is the weirdest example you may have heard. And I'm sorry for the overshare, but you need to hear it. Have any of you ever heard of a perifit?
Yes, I think so.
Yes. Sarah's like, where are you going with this?
Tell me what.
No, it is.
I don't want to.
No, it's what you think. So I have had 4 children.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that doesn't happen without some sort of damage. So the Americans, because they're so progressive, were like, we need to kind of fix you up, and sort out, where the children exited from. So they were like, here is a perifit, and it's basically like a gym for your vagina, and but it's entirely gamified and it's the best thing ever. I was thinking, where does it connect? And so basically, it's really, really incredible tech. So it's something that you have to kind of wear, and it measures like the strength of like your pelvic floor, your muscles, and everything, and it literally collates it all, and it works out where your weaknesses are, where you need to exercise it, and then it gives you a program. And this program is basically playing games, so like Angry Birds, but it's how you like tense and release muscles which actually make the bird move. So it's brilliant. And you just sit on this app and you do it. But the thing that is incredible, but also utterly repulsive about it, is that they've thought about community. So you can connect with anybody else who is also playing at the same time and competing against each other. Um, which is like grim, but also how hilarious is that? And I think for me, like, if that is how we're going to gamify the world and it's that weird and wonderful kind of thing, I'm down for it. Um, yeah, I just wanted to share that just to Rayleigh because it popped into my head. I was like, actually, that was good because it felt playful. Like the way it was set up, the way it didn't feel coercive. There was options, there was opportunities, and like you wouldn't know I'd had 4 kids. Like I can bounce on a trampoline really, really well. So it did its job as well.
And what I love about that as well, I feel like there's another element to it, which is like you're talking about something that isn't talked about, right? Like, and you've even like caveated with like, oh, I'm sorry for the overshare. Like, this is like this should be a completely normalized topic of conversation about women's health, right? So what it's also doing is enabling that community to exist in a way that isn't like icky and like, oh my god, oh, I've got like problems with my pelvic floor. We don't talk about that, but it's like giving like an extra platform that is a bit tongue in cheek and kind of therefore, yeah, I haven't quite articulated it yet, but like it feels like there's another element
shame.
because it's a kind of an unspoken about topic, something that's a bit difficult for people to connect over because they don't talk about it as much as perhaps we should. And is there something in that also makes the entry point to be via play so much more impactful and welcome?
Yeah.
I think too that, Lucie, you brought up the idea of apps, which is what people often think about when we're talking about play today. And the second app that you talked about strengthening the perineum or whatever, what was it called?
Yeah.
Perifit?
Yeah, the perifit.
That is interesting because it's not obviously all in your mind. It's also about biofeedback, right? So it's linking your mind to something else. And then your first question, or your first comment, which was, okay, let's say we have an app about mental well-being in a workplace and it's gamified and people are doing all these things. They're still just doing them on their phone individually with a virtual community. So it's helpful to have the virtual community. I think that is a complaint and a comment that we're seeing increasingly as we're spending increasing time on our apps. And so I think also what we will begin to see more of is integrating instructions on apps to the real world. Okay. So in a workplace, the mental health app could say, okay, you know, I don't know, what are your strengths? What's your gratitude? Da, 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 da. But then it could also say, you tick off the boxes and you get confetti or whatever you get, fine gamification. But it could also say, go open the window and say hi to a bird. Or it could say, go see a coworker and ask your coworker for their favorite joke. And you have to, so it doesn't just the fact that something's in an app, it doesn't mean it has to be totally insular. And our solution is often like, okay, well, we'll embed a community into the app. But I think we can be even more creative than just saying, okay, we're talking all to ourselves on this phone with a lot of other people who are talking to themselves on this phone. So there's a community aspect, but I think we can do more to integrate the social aspect.
I've never even thought about like gamifying it outwardly. But I really like that. So when you study NLP, one of the first things they make you do, or when I did it, was like the pizza walk, and you had to go in, find 4 random people and find out what their favorite topping of pizza is. So it could be literally things like that, and then that they can't unlock the next level until they have got proof that they completed the task or whatever it could be, like get a selfie with somebody, or and that's a completely new way for me to think about it. I like that a lot.
And can I just throw on, sorry, just what you were saying before, Sarah, about problem solving in play? And then bringing it back to something Lucie was saying at the beginning of our conversation, which was, Lucie, you were talking about how the ideal job is when you're just learning, right? And we've talked about how to define play, etc. For me, play is learning. This is why kids play, to learn. Is learning in the best sense, right? But of course, we've not done schools as well as we could have done. And so kids feel that learning is a drag, whereas the most effective learning is through play. And also, we see this so humans are driven to solve problems. We love solving problems, okay? And play can be seen as a way to scratch that itch. This is why we're all doing, the word, Wordle or the numbers game. This is all like, okay, give me a problem to solve, give me a problem to solve, give me a problem to solve. And I don't have a problem to solve, so give me a small problem to solve, and that will focus my attention outside of myself, by the way. But so we can, if you want to present play in an organization, it can be completely framed and repackaged as problem solving.
Yeah. Ooh, Avi, that's so useful. And this is how we're developing those skills. This is why it's really useful. And we're nearly at the hour, but it would have been so useful as well. Not only does play make us better thinkers, but it helps us live longer as well. Like the actual benefits we have, the health benefits from engaging in kind of recovery practices is not something to be overlooked. And I saw somebody who posted on LinkedIn that their world changed when they realized that business could be activism. And I was like, hell yeah. So my business is like Rebels for Humanity, like that's the strapline. And it's all that whole idea of actually, as an organization, do we have is there like some kind of moral imperative to actually create spaces that people live longer? Because currently these spaces are taking years off people's lives. And the idea of actually packaging it up is like flow, problem solving, but also there's these incredible health benefits that we're not just fannying about here. Is that how we're meant to be hitting the market? Like, don't know if that was just my stream of consciousness that you got.
Yeah. And I guess the question that always comes back with that from that is like, yeah, great, but how? Like, how do we, like, these things, they will make total sense and they're kind of easy for an organization to buy into. And then it's like, but how? And then what comes to my mind is like, well, if this is, then we've created a problem here, that then let's solve that problem by playing with it. And like, then we enter into this, you know, like a playful consultancy process where rather than kind of taking a advisory role in terms of this, you need to be doing more of this and do this and implement this and tell your staff this and blah, blah, blah. It's a kind of co-created exploration where it, you know, and this is where things like appreciative inquiry can be really useful and powerful, I guess, where you're kind of looking, you take that as your problem and take it through like an appreciative inquiry process where you're asking positively framed questions that move us towards some kind of action or solution that gets a better outcome. Then we're like, to me, that can be a process of play as well. You know, what if we imagined this, the best ideal outcome from this, and what if we, you know, got there in this way, and what if we did it in this way? Then you get that autonomy as part of it, and it kind of is, the process itself becomes the outcome.
Can I add to that? I work with lots of organizations and I'm very much about co-creation, but it has to be outside of the leadership team. The amount of rooms I go into, and I will, if I ever use the word resilience, that's why I say psychological fitness all the time, because the amount of times I've said resilience and they've said, what do they want to do to me now? Like, it has been weaponized. Oh, I have to be stronger, do I? I have to tolerate more. Why? And so I'm working with a big organization at the minute, and we're looking at kind of well-being outcomes, and I'm like, well, this can't be you, the top, you know, the SLT, deciding what your employees need because you're not their parents. This begins with us contacting, and I know it's dependent on organizational size, but say there's hundreds of people in the space, but no, we're not doing anything until we've had feedback off every single person. And so we put that in the diary for them. It is ring fence. That is a non-negotiable, like basic surveys, feedback, and continuous check-ins. And then it's transparency as well. So as we are rolling out our process, it is literally looking at how can we be continuously transparent. How are we allowing two-way communication? Go on, Evie.
I was just going to say, because also just on the time, so I won't go too long into this, but perhaps it's helpful to look at play as an umbrella of good practices. So when we try and characterize play, as we saw, autonomy is key to play. Getting outside of yourself is, you cannot play and be self-focused, you know, on like, how am I looking? Am I doing a good job? You know, so getting outside of yourself, problem solving, all of these things, if we look at that, so how do we sell play to an organization, or how do we kind of encourage people to have more play? It's, let's look at the elements that make play so enjoyable and have all these benefits, Lucie, that you were talking about, and then see how we can incrementally increase each one of those without necessarily saying, here's a ping pong table, let's all be more playful.
Yeah, for sure. Right, that feels like a kind of natural space to round us up. But before we go, Evie, I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit more about the kind of current work that you are really keen on and how people can best get in touch with you.
Okay.
We'll put that in the show notes, like that kind of a stuff. But yeah, where's the dream at the minute?
So what I've been working on now recently is basically how to make it easier for people to have impact in various ways. And I've been focused specifically, actually, increasingly on the workplace. And so how to help people have impact without leaving their jobs, even if they feel like they are in a they're stuck in a job where they can't have impact. And this is all based on being pro-social, getting outside of ourselves, etc. And so I've got some ideas on a website called Impact Differently, but we can put that in the show notes.
Lovely. We
Amazing.
can. Thank you. So if anybody is looking for that meaning making and impact in the workplace, you are the woman that they need to be sliding into the DMs of. Fabulous. Sarah, is there anything that you want to kind of throw into the convo before we wrap up?
I think no, I'm going to say no, because otherwise we're going to open up a whole load of other things. But yeah, this has been a really great chat, and lots of thought-provoking things have come up. I think I've been kind of I need to take away some things and like mull them over. I think, the components, thinking about autonomy, thinking about problem, play as a methodology, if you like, for problem solving, I think is a really useful way to look at this. And, what if we weren't solving a problem? What if we were playing? Like, how would we approach this differently? So yeah, I'm looking forward to mulling on this and seeing where we are next time in a month when we check in again.
Do it all over again.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, team, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute blast. Yeah, and I hope that those of you who are listening connect with Evie, myself, and Sarah and continue on the conversation. But until next time, take it easy and spread some joy.
Thank you.